If you don't want to be on camera, now's your time to sort of turn it off. Please also mute yourselves and put any questions in the chat. They'll be picked up and bunched together by our chat administrator. And we'll try and get answers for all the questions we don't have time to do today. There will be an aid memoir, for those who don't know what that is, some notes, which will be sent out to you after the session. So you have no need to take any notes today, although you're very welcome to if you wish to. We'll also presume that you know where your own fire exits are and your toilets. And so without further ado, can we please introduce Margaret Jackson, which feels a bit weird because most people sort of know Margaret, but those of you that don't, Margaret's been a rep since 2013. And during that time, she has been a rep for 5 different areas, as well as co-designing and delivering the environmental learning series, which many of us would have really enjoyed, and also the Making It Happen learning series. She's also a plan assessor, and in that capacity has assessed a number of business plans. So Margaret is also a qualified landscape architect for moving into regeneration world, holding roles as director of progression of regeneration programs, in which preparing and assessing business plans was a fundamental element. You sound very, very, very well qualified, Margaret, so I'll sort of hand over to you and sort of let you begin.
Okay, well, I'll just say a little bit about myself, following on from Stephen before I get onto the slides. Stephen's right. How am I qualified to talk about business plans today? Because I'm getting old, as you can see by the colour of my hair, and in a long career, I have been a deliverer because I was the first director for one of the first community development trusts in the country. The community had a vision. It didn't have a lot of money. We discovered early on that if we were robust about our project, showed how it was going to be run and it could stack up financially, that we could then raise the capital. Business plans are fundamental to raising money, but also are very good in ensuring that you know where you're going with your project. Moved on from there to be director of, I think I've got the whole suite of government regeneration programs. And of course, a big role of that is to assess business plans. Are you going to support this? Does it meet your strategy, etc.? Moved on from there to join a consultancy, a spin-off of one of the big 6, who advised organisations, many and various, and I was often in teams that were helping prepare business plans or work with organisations to prepare business plans. So I've been involved at all levels. So that's my qualification by experience, which is a good phrase for big locals together. And at this point, I'm going to share my screen and desperately hope that I get this right. So share, and I'm going to go through this. Is this play from start? Is that okay? Can you see it all? Yeah? Yeah, fingers up, jolly good. So I'm going to talk about a cautionary tale to start off with. Then what's meant by a business plan, and because Big Locals Together likes things in 10s, I'm going to talk about the 10 sections in a business plan and why. And also I'm going to give you 10 top tips. I've just about managed to say that. So moving on, the cautionary tale. Some of you will have been to this building. The Florrie, it was at the heart of the Liverpool community for 130 years until it closed in the 80s and had a fire. And by the end of the last century, you can see the condition that it was in. Well, Merseyside had the benefit of Objective 1, which brought massive amounts of European money to Merseyside, but especially Liverpool, and especially the deprived parts of Liverpool. And I was approached early days by a community activist called Roger. I think he lobbied everybody. He got ahead of steam and they managed to raise millions and millions to refurbish this building. And as you can see from the pictures, it's thriving now, but not without some challenges. In the early days, after it opened, lots of programs were run in this building, training programs, enterprise startup programs, community programs, lots of different things for the community. But along came the big financial crash and 2010. And suddenly they discovered that their 20-odd staff that were running all these programs could no longer be afforded because they were all funded by Objective One and government money. So Anne London, who was the chief executive at the time, approached with some help various charities, and many of you will have heard about the Tudor Trust. And the Tudor Trust said, yeah, we will certainly consider supporting you, but not without a business plan. Well, these days it might be a surprise to you to discover that they'd spent probably in excess of 20 million on this and never really had a business plan. They didn't have to. And Anne said, a business plan, oh, goodness me, but Tudor Trust were very good, and I understand that they helped to pay for it. If you speak to Anne now, she'll say it's the best thing they ever had to do, because it forced them to sit down and take a long, hard look at how they could really run that building to benefit the local community and be sustainable in the long term. And if you ever get a chance to listen to Anne, you really should, because it's an eye-opener for everybody. So that leads me to the next slide, which should be the next slide. Oh dear, what's happening here? It seems to have frozen. You might have to help me out here, Claire. Why has this frozen? If I go back, it has frozen. Great.
It's come to life.
Oh, it's come to life. So what is a business plan? Oh, well, I've stepped forward to one too soon now. Never mind, I'll just go on. What is meant by a business plan? It describes your organisations and its activities, or indeed one of your specific projects. It sets out your goals, plans, finances, and your risks. And you also need to show you understand your market. And I sometimes say to people, when thinking about a business plan, think of it as a story with linked chapters, which incorporate, key sections in it. Oh, it's working now, thank goodness. So what are the 10 things to include in your business plan? Firstly, an executive summary. Perhaps that's an obvious thing, but it's surprising how for many readers, it might be the only thing that they read, the executive summary. So it's absolutely important that you get it right. Probably you prepare it at the end, but it needs to interest the reader. So the next section. You know who you are, but it's really important to tell your reader just who you are. What is your organisation? And what's your legal status? How long have you been going? What's your overall vision? And very importantly, who are your major partners and your stakeholders? So immediately, if people are reading it, okay, we know what this is about, we know who you're about. So moving on, what are the overall aims of your project? If it's a physical development project, it might well be about your building, your space, what it is now and what you want it to become. If it's a sort of, a revenue project, as I call it, i.e. not building, it's a full outline of the change that you want to make and the full potential. And here I'm going to give a flag for Big Locals Together, because at the moment, Big Locals Together is going through a process of developing their business plan. And for Big Locals Together, your overall aim is really your theory of change and your goal, or the goal. And for those who aren't involved at Big Locals Together just yet, go along to Connect, so you'll find out more about it then. As you go into your business plan, you get into more detail. So the fourth section should detail your activities and the evidence of your market. So it's essential to go into a certain amount of detail about your specific activities, how these have been researched, and thought through. And you know, big locals together are thinking at the moment about what their activities, what their core activities will be. And I won't speak, you know, steal the thunder of the presentation at Connect, but they'll be talking about that then. So you've gone through who you are, what your aims are, what your activities are, and the evidence of your market. Really important, the evidence of your market, especially if you're new, if you're a new organisation, and you might need to show what your competition is and how you'll collaborate as well. So moving on, okay, that's what you're going to do. How are you going to do it? What are your operations? So, you know, what's your staffing structure? Where will you be based? And what is the role of volunteers? So you need to be really clear on how you're going to undertake your activities. And of course, for the Florey, they really had to look at that. What are our operations? How many staff do we need to deliver our core activities? Can we be doing them in a different way? Can we bring on board and take, you know, and embrace volunteers much more? And that then will lead into the people. Okay, who are the key people involved in making a decision? And that's, I would recommend you detail your trustees or your board. Who are they? What's their background? What are their skills? And, you know, do people have a mix of skills? Do you have some finance skills there? Do you have people who really understand and know the community, really understand and know the market? So who are those key people? And you often hear in the old, you know, that bank managers used to look in the eyes of the business owner and think, am I going to fund this guy? So that's what this is all about. It's the people making the decisions and driving forward who make a real difference and keep a close eye on the project. And so it's really important to detail who they are. I've slipped this next one in because it's really important for business plans that have been prepared for a lot of community and voluntary organisation. Impact your double bottom line. And it's important to think about, you know, and to document, you know it all, and it's there all around you, but document what are the social benefits of your activities, and do give some specifics, because, you know, that really emphasizes the social needs and the needs that you're meeting. And, you know, it's so important. Now, so you've got the full story there, you're getting the story, and having got that story with a detail of what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be doing it, who's going to be taking the decisions, then moving on to the finances. Some people think of a business plan just as the finances. It really isn't. It's the finances, but they make nothing without mean nothing without the story beforehand. So that really needs to provide detail of the main sources of income, the obvious one. Again, detail all the assumptions and indicate how that might be projected to increase or decrease over coming months and years. So all the income, and that might be from grants, it might be from services, it might be from fundraising, all sorts of, you know, earned money. And then obviously the costs and expenditure. Now you've already detailed the staff, so you know that's the big staffing, that's the big cost, generally speaking, with any running costs, it's the staffing costs. But again, include any assumptions and how that might change. At the moment, for instance, you know, you might need to build in an inflationary factor for wages, just because of the news that we're getting constantly about inflation. Finances, the pricing strategies. This is all part of your assumptions, really. That's really important if you want to have differential pricing to attract different organisations to take, you know, to take part in your services. And then obviously bringing all of that together in the financial forecasts, and generally in a high level business plan, it'll be income and expenditure projections over, say, 3 to 5 years. So, you know, finances obviously are the core for any business plan. And it's really important to show and demonstrate that you've thought about all aspects of your project and that you understand all aspects of your project and that your project can be sustainable long term. Okay, moving on. So 10 things to include: risks and assumptions. I've sometimes started business plans. I was asked to go and help a group somewhere a few years ago now to think about their business plan, and I looked at what they'd written, and I actually started with a risk workshop for them, so that they'd never really thought through the risks. And it is really important for directors and senior staff to understand all the risks, but also to show to funders that a risk assessment has been undertaken, probably as a joint exercise, because it will help demonstrate that the management will keep an eye on that. Now, you all probably know that the best thing with risks is get them all identified and then think about, okay, what's the likelihood that these will happen? And what would be the impact of them if they did happen? And you will score all of those, and you can pick out the ones that will have a high score. Generally, with a new organisation, the high scores will be around finance and they'll be around governance. As you go on, the risks become more varied, but you know, that's a sweeping generalisation. But you know, on the risks, I think it was one organisation, and they hadn't quite appreciated that not being incorporated meant that trustees were individually liable. They'd never addressed it. And so, you know, it is really important to look at the risks. These days, I know that there's some discussion about obviously fuel prices for hubs, for instance, which could potentially blow a complete hole through the business plans. Now that's a complete, you know, that's come from left field, hasn't it? But you know, it just shows you how important it is to think about the unfortunate things that could happen. Not because you want them to happen, but you might just think about, well, what are the mitigating factors that we can put in place now to address that? So for instance, the fuel one, you know, if the government does give us 18 months grace, well, then at least people have got an opportunity over the next 12 months to think, what on earth can we do to mitigate this? So moving on, because I know I've only meant to have 10 minutes. The last thing, number 10, your action plan. So really important when you've gone through all of that to understand what the key next steps are. It's important for you to understand it, but also for any funders or readers to understand what the next steps are, and you know, and also the decisions that you need to make. So that's the 10 things you need to include, and I've been asked to have 10 top tips, and I can say that, and I was quite careful. I thought, well, I don't want to just give you the sections again, so this is 10 different top tips. So the first one is, be clear on the purpose of the business plan, since that can determine the emphasis. For example, if you're applying for a grant, a major grant, you might be focusing on the impact and the value for money, as well as showing it can be sustainable. If you're applying for a social investment, strong financial planning and forecasts and the social impact would be useful. If you're a new organisation, an operational plan, robust financial planning, that's common to all, evidence of market research will be important, which of course it is for big locals together. So they're looking at who else is in the market, who the collaborators would be. Number 2, prepare your business plan as an interactive exercise through discussion, collaboration, learning and problem solving. This is all in a purist world, of course, when we understand it's not always that easy. Ensure you understand your market. Again, that's vital for new organisations aiming to establish their unique selling point. USP is unique selling point. And it's actually often through examining the market that you understand just where you fit. Next one, involve stakeholders and collaborators. No organisation is an island. You all operate in a context. And one of the things I could have put as a key section for a business plan is, what is the strategic context? I think the business plan here was more operational, but you know, it's involve stakeholders and collaborators and let them know what you're doing and bring them along with you. If time is limited, think about any help you can enlist or pay for. And that's really helpful too, because it's often really important to get somebody outside who acts as your mirror and actually challenges you on some of the assumptions that you don't challenge yourself on. And you know, I know consultants are often accused of, you know, you give them, they borrow your watch to tell you the time, but you know, sometimes they do tell you the time and you were reading it wrong, you know. So that's important. 6, address all the sections. And if you don't have the information, then these become actions. And that leads on to any business plan should be a living document and continually updated. The plan itself is really the end result of the process and the beginning of the next. And a business plan really, in doing it in this way, should give you the confidence that you can provide the service which meets the need of the community, but deal with problems as they come along and take full advantage of the opportunities. It's the business planning that makes the difference. It's a chance for your partnership to really work together and bring their experience and passion to address key problems. And number 10, your business plan is about preparing for the future. And remember my mantra, I think, at the Making Project Happen: fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So on that, I will stop sharing.
That's absolutely fantastic. I was about to interject. It's going to pull the mic away from you because we've only got about 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. We have got some questions, which I sort of like pull up on my screen. Some really good ones. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely great presentation, Margaret. Sort of really sort of put it together in a sort of very concise and sort of simple to sort of understand way. One of the questions came back, got a couple of my own as well, so I'll try and interject, is one from Bill. He was saying, is the executive summary like the epilogue? So, you know, what's your thoughts on that?
An executive summary should be a punchy summary of all the sections in your business plan.
Excellent. There's one from James, and he was asking, is a business plan a static document or is it something to regularly revise?
Absolutely. It should be something that you continually use and refer to. It should not be something you do and put on the shelf. If you work together on it, then you should always be referring to it.
Most organisations do it annually, but at the moment with the insecure market, particularly if you're doing a capital project and the cost of stuff just going through the roof, you might want to do it every 6 months.
No, indeed. And one of the questions I was kind of thinking, a simplistic like myself, a little bit simple. I was thinking, what kind of formats have you seen sort of business plans in the sense around, are they, are we still handing out paper documents? Are people sort of whistling sort of PowerPoint presentations for their business plans? Are they doing it in a Word document? Is it sort of linked to an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, what kind of business plans are you seeing in this modern age? Is there any sort of new ways sort of presenting it?
The ones I've seen, I have to say, are a bit old-fashioned. They're still paper documents. They're good if they can encapsulate as many diagrams and pictures or photographs as possible to make them alive. I always think that you've got to do the hard work of getting it down, and then you can do the fun work, if you like, of making it more interesting. So I've answered that in two ways, really. But I've generally seen written documents, actually. Yeah.
And I guess there's that fear, isn't it, of someone putting a business plan together. You don't want to put something together that someone's going to think isn't serious.
Yeah, it's quite useful quite often in the past when I was working with a consultancy that we would spend a lot of time doing a long document and actually then at the end pull together the executive summary that we often jazzed up quite a lot, but then people could go and dive into the detail at a later date. Oh, no, not a later date, dive into the detail as they wanted and required. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I'm just picking up a few comments in the chat. I'm glad James thought what it's like. I couldn't remember what it was, but pitch deck, which is definitely something sort of for people.
Oh gosh, James, yes, please talk about that.
It's fascinating. And Chris was saying, would you be happy to share a couple of examples, Margaret, of business plans that you may have seen in the past?
Yes, I would. Yes, I guess.
Maybe that's something we can share with the notes.
Yes, we can share the notes. Yes, yeah. Yes, I mean, I haven't got so many on my computer now because it's a while since I've worked as a consultant. But yeah, sure. We might have to get permission from the people who they are for, because when you're working as a consultant, if you do a business plan, that business plan is not your business plan; it is their business plan, and you cannot really share it without their authority.
Stephen, I've put my email address in the chat. There's quite a good starter template in the Prince's Trust for a business plan, and I've adapted that. So if anybody wants to just email me, I can send them a copy of that. And I can also send them an anonymized version of some financials, some spreadsheets, some monthly management accounts and a cash flow. So if anybody wants that, my email address is in the chat and I can send those out as samples.
Just been in the chat, my 15 minutes had gone. Sorry, I didn't see that.
That's right, no problem at all. I would have kept you honest, don't worry. We are sort of rapidly approaching that sort of end period time. But one other question I was going to ask linked to that is, and I think this is sort of the thing that I always thought when I was at school, when people were asking me to do homework, how long should it be? How long should a business plan be? In the sense of, but I guess we sort of answered that question partly, sort of talking about the executive summary. But I mean, can a business plan be too long?
Undoubtedly true, yes, with everything.
Is there a magic number, Margaret? That's what I'm looking for.
No, I'm not going to give you one. It really depends on the complexity of the thing that you're describing. But I'll leave you with this thought. It takes twice as long to do a short document, because to do a short document, or to do a short anything, you've got to do the long one first and then pick out what are the real salient points. So yeah, it can be short, but that doesn't mean that you can skip things.
That's absolutely fantastic. Listen, I know that we're very close to our sort of 30 minutes, but just whilst, big thank you to Margaret, absolutely fantastic sort of bite size. I know we have another bite size that, and I know sort of Claire spoke about it, is it cash flow? I think which is going to be our last one, but I'm sure not our last one ever, but certainly our last one in this series. Just while I've got everyone together, obviously for those of you that will be at Connects next week, Big Locals Day will be at Connects as well. On the Saturday, conference room 2, 10:30 to 11:30, there'll be the extraordinary Big Locals Together, sort of myself and James will be speaking about the Big Locals Together programme, and also be nominating members onto the board at this extraordinary sort of general meeting. So definitely one not to miss, but also have a stall at Connect as well. So if you're going to choose to be somewhere else at 10:30 on Saturday, you can certainly come and speak to us all weekend. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Sort of look forward to seeing people at the next bite size, and sort of look forward to catching up with people with Connect. So all I've got to say is thank you and goodbye. And thank you, Margaret.
Before you go, could you pop one thing in the chat box that you've learned or you found helpful from this session? Just very quickly, because we're collecting that as evidence of the sessions. So if you could all just do that before you go, that would be great.
Yes, please do.
And the top 10 tips.
We'll be here, so don't worry.
The top 10 tips and the presentation will come out to you by email.
We will miss seeing you at Connects, won't we, Claire? But we hope you enjoy yourselves very much.
Yes,
I'm taking a giant coat out of you, Margaret, and putting it in pride of place at the front of the room. Don't you worry about that. You'll be there in spirit.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'm going to say is, if whoever's recording, can you stop recording and then people can speak?